Hello everybody, it's Sylvie. Welcome back to Tarot Magpie. I hope you are doing good. In today's video, I am chatting about my tarot practice and how I approach the cards, how I approach my practice when I'm going through a bit of a tricky time. And I'm intentionally keeping that very vague. Purely because there's a whole bunch of different reasons why I might be feeling a bit squishy and sensitive and not on top form. And actually, to be fair, not so much in the last week or two, but certainly through January and the end of the year. The end of the year is always rough. So December, the winter in general, and January, I was feeling not so fantastic. It's all good, nothing serious or dreadful, I'm fine. But since I've been feeling a little bit better and able to reflect on my practice and how that changes according to how I'm feeling, I thought I would film a video about it because I think it's interesting, for one, just how our tarot practice adapts to how we're feeling, what we're up to, how much time and energy and capacity we have. But also because I talk a lot on this channel about decks I'm going to work with, decks I'm going to deep dive, study plans that I've got, like my journaling practice. But obviously that's all very aspirational and rarely does it go according to plan. And so I thought I would chat a bit about what my practice looks like when life isn't so much going according to plan, just in case it's of interest to anybody else. Before I get seriously into it, I would hope this goes without saying, but you never know. I am not advocating for tarot as sole mental health support. I believe that tarot, and I suppose oracle cards as well, I believe they can be a great supplement, but not a substitute for whatever other mental health support one might need. Sometimes they're useful, sometimes they're not. It really does just depend on what's going on. Personally, for me, this video is about my practice. Again, I feel like this shouldn't need saying, but you never know. My practice is for me and my brain and my life and my goals and whatever circumstances I'm in. It fits me. Yours should fit you. In this video, I'm going to be going through the decks that I reach for when I'm feeling off kilter, as well as how I like to read when I'm feeling off kilter, less than great. Tarot is a tool. It's one that has a lot of uses in my personal toolkit for dealing with bad brain times. I think that's all the disclaiming out of the way. I feel low-key quite nervous to talk about this because you know what the internet is like. Things can be taken very out of context, but this is me and my practice and my brain, and maybe it will resonate with you, maybe it won't. Take it or leave it. So firstly, the decks that I like to reach for in tricky times. So unsurprisingly, I look to decks that are not too harsh and not too confrontational. There is a bit of a balance to be struck here. I don't like feeling patronized. I've spoken a lot about how I don't like the more light-washed, toxic positivity kind of vibes that I see in especially oracle decks, but it is also true of some tarot decks. So yeah, I don't like feeling patronized. And a lot of decks on the market that do skew in that positive way, even if they're not quite as bad as the toxic positivity, a lot of them make me feel a little bit like I'm being talked down to, and that's not what I need from the cards ever. But especially when I'm feeling mentally crap. Like there's a difference between like light washing and like toxic positivity and more solutions oriented positivity, which is what I tend to want. But I don't know, I'm fussy, I'm easily annoyed, I'm not sure, so it's hard to find. There are a couple of exceptions to that rule, and that is, and I've spoken about these before, the Rebecca Campbell decks that I've got. So I have the Healing Waters Oracle and the Rose Oracle. Rebecca Campbell has more decks out that are not my vibe, and this is, I think, similar to like the Daniel Noel decks and all that kind of thing. So this is quite like, it's kind of erring on good vibes only, but like in a ignore your problems way, but like doesn't quite get there. And so I find it workable for me. Did I tell you what these decks are called? This is the Healing Waters Oracle and this is the Rose Oracle. I truly, apparently I'm not listening to what I'm saying. But anyhow, these are quite soft and gentle. Like we look at the key, like look at the images. They're very soft and pretty, and they definitely fit that kind of light working vibe that is in a lot of oracle decks and often leans to hyper positive or manifest happiness and you'll be fine. For my taste, like it irks me, but yeah, they've definitely got that aesthetic. And then the keywords as well, we've got like trust your inner compass, be led from within. Oh, these are both about within. And then the child within, inner mother, innocence, gentleness, tenderness. Like this, like release the past, forgive, soften, and move forward can definitely read unhelpfully positive, or not even positive at that point, just unhelpful, because that's not a solution for a lot of problems. And if you're like mentally feeling very stuck on something, or feeling like something is in the way of having a good brain time, like that's really vague, but I don't want to get into specifics, either of my own brain or to try and like, because I'm not offering advice here. This is not like that tarot disclaimer. This does not replace advice from a medical practitioner and should not be taken as such. Like, so I don't want to get too specific, but what am I saying? Yeah, like forgive and forget and move on, like is not helpful advice if it's a certain kind of problem that actually needs to be tackled. Like that's not a resolution, you know? That's what I'm getting at. And yeah. But then some of them I like underworld, depth, courage, facing your fears. Like it's quite a vague, gentle message, but it's not unhelpful. And the way I use these decks is alongside tarot to kind of soften whatever the tarot has to say. And they're pretty, they just are. And like what really matters, reflect, reprioritize. Like that's helpful advice when I'm feeling a bit scrambled. This is upside down. So yeah. Like some of it is definitely a bit meaningless sentiment, which again, sometimes I don't mind a meaningless sentiment. Sometimes I want to look at something pretty and have something tell me like it's all good, and what will happen is what's meant to happen and all that. Like I don't generally prescribe to that a lot, but like sometimes that is a helpful addition to whatever I've got going on. It's like a little bit of a meaningless platitude, but there's a time and a place and I can appreciate it. So these are my soft and gentle kind of oracle decks. And okay, look, I do kind of want one of the Daniel Noel decks. Is it the Shadow Moonchild? And I want that because it's pretty and because I've been coming around to this kind of art style where it's like photoshopped. It's got real people, which I don't love, but it's like this very layered, oh god, what's the word? Not ephemeral. It looks like it's got that like ethereal, light worky kind of a vibe. And like I think I've said before, light working is not a thing that I intentionally do. Like it's not a term that I use. It's not a practice that I kind of care for myself. Okay, another oracle deck that I love and that I've definitely spoken about many times before is the Reclaim Oracle. This is by so it's by Marion Constantino, and this is the 3rd edition of the Reclaim Oracle apparently. I don't know what the differences between the editions are, but just for the sake of giving you the facts, this is the 3rd edition of the Reclaim Oracle, and this deck is wonderful and I would not be without it in my practice. This is an emotional roll call. I like to flip through this. There are several ways I like to do this, but one of the ways when I'm not sure what I'm feeling, but I know I don't like it, like when I'm feeling a bit scrambled, a bit like overstimulated, or just feeling kind of not good, but there's no obvious reason. Okay, after briefly interrupting myself to take my medication, which this deck reminded me to do, I've forgotten where I was. Yeah, if it's anxiety or depression, then it's that I'm feeling, then often I'm like, well, that's chemical, there's not really that much to be fixed, so I turn to like other coping mechanisms and other skills and what have you. But if I don't know what I'm feeling, and if I just generally feel like not good and not correct, one of the ways I really like to use this deck is I just flip through the whole thing quite quickly, reading the keywords, and then anything that feels like it resonates, I pull out, I put in a separate pile. So maybe like, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling shame, I'm not feeling rejection, trust is not an issue right now, blame is not an issue right now, maybe closure is, and so on and so forth. And then I turn to my little pile of cards that did feel like they resonated, and then I think about it a little bit more deeply. And what I really love about this deck is there are so many cards that there are kind of different words, that different names for very similar feelings. So like for me, say like here I've got unworthiness and shame might feel very similar in a particular moment, so I might pull both of these and be like, okay, those both resonate, and then I sit with it for a minute, I look at the imagery and I think, okay, actually shame is not really feeling how I'm feeling, but unworthiness is maybe closer to what I'm feeling right now. And then I can go to the guidebook, which is actually really quite good. It's just a little paragraph of what that can feel like and what it can mean. And that, again, like it's not a psychology textbook, but it's enough to like get me thinking about, okay, so for whatever reason, unworthiness felt like it resonated. So why might that be? And I can have a little think through what I'm feeling and try and describe it to myself. So I can go through, I can, try and problem solve a bit once I've kind of put a name to the problem. So I can be like, okay, so I'm feeling this kind of way because of this situation with a friend, maybe I need to have a conversation, or maybe I just need to get outside and get out of my head, or, whatever the case may be. This helps me kind of slow down and not exactly rationalize, but verbalize to myself what might be going on. And in doing that, it helps me like figure out a bit of a way forward, or figure out what to do. The Outgrow Yourself. How do I describe this deck? It's not so much positive as kind of like aggressive self-help, if that's a genre. Like I have, as you might be able to guess from how I spoke about a lot of oracle decks that are a bit toxic positivity, a lot of self-helpy books, practices, a lot of more self-helpy vibes is a bit too much like, you hold all the answers and you have all the power that you need to change your situation, which just like factually, materially is not the case for so many people and so many of their problems. So anyhow, this is not what this deck is. This deck is a little bit more like aggressive about it, and a little bit more spiky is how I describe this deck a lot. Like it's a good companion to something that is a little bit more soft and gentle, because you get, on the one hand, you get the like forgive, release, move through it, you have all the power kind of bullshit, but then also like some of these especially is like, do you accept yourself fully, which is a bit of a gut punch sometimes, and like these are quite nice, like your voice will guide you, and then cruelty is the highest pleasure. So like it kind of is a bit more of a full spectrum of helpful statements in the way that self-care is not always like a bubble bath and a nice candle. Sometimes it's like making yourself do the washing up because it hasn't been done in a week, even if you have to like have a little cry about it afterwards. Like sometimes it's not pretty, and this deck I think has that range. Like go to your happy place is very kind of nice and inoffensive, and then like what is keeping you caged is a bit more of a soul-searching kind of question. Like, do you know what I'm getting at? So, like, stop resisting progress. And like the imagery as well, it's a little bit more, like realistic isn't the word I'm looking for, but I feel like this deck acknowledges the reality of the situation a little bit more, rather than just pretending that all you need to do is think happy thoughts and your problems will be solved. So yeah, this is a good like middle ground for when I want some like practical self-helpy, self-care kind of energy, because a lot of these statements as well do really make me think, and they're a good way, in the way that I view tarot as a whole, as a way of bringing a perspective to a problem, a situation, a goal, or whatever you're doing a reading about. Tarot is just an additional perspective that you can then have a conversation with. The statements in this deck are particularly good for that. Every statement in here, I think, is quite supportive, but that support is not always soft and fluffy. So that is the Outgrow Yourself. Right, so these are the oracle decks that I grabbed for. Honestly, all oracle decks are kind of good for when I'm feeling a bit squishy and vulnerable, because they tend to be a little bit more supportive, and they tend to have, especially in guidebooks, they tend to have affirmations or journaling prompts or something like that, which isn't so much the case with tarot, which has its like structure that's consistent. So anyhow, I do have some tarot decks that are my go-tos. Crystal Visions Tarot is the first one I've grabbed. I spoke about this in my New Year, New in my New Year, New Mood decks, which is actually really hard to say. Like the season between seasons decks, because this has got a lot of atmosphere, and I think that's mainly to do with the colours and the way the backgrounds have been done. But this deck has a lot of atmosphere, and because it's a tarot deck, and this is obviously going to be the case for all the tarot decks that I grab, it's got the same scary cards as any tarot deck. Like it's, and I say scary, but you know what I mean. Like it's got the Tower. Here's Death, for instance, popping up to say hi. It's got the more difficult cards. And obviously there's the like standard scary cards like Death and the Tower and the Devil. And then there's the cards that I personally have a little bit more difficulty with. And it's got all those cards, but it's also got like a softness to it, and it's really pretty, and the like atmosphere and the depth to it make it feel just a bit gentler. And truly, that's basically all I have to say. It's pretty, and it like goes deep but not dark, which is a video I keep meaning to make, but I love this Queen of Swords. Like it's beautiful, which definitely helps, let's be real. The imagery is not scary. Like you saw that Death card. Well, here's the Ten of Swords, which is pretty standard Ten of Swords. And like we've got like blood on the snow, like it's not shying away from the more difficult imagery completely. It's not pretending that the difficulties of some cards are not there. Like it's realistic in that sense. It doesn't feel patronizing is what I'm getting at. Like we've got the difficulties like in the Five of Swords here, but there is a softness to it, which makes it a little bit not even comforting. It just makes me, how am I describing this? It's supportive. Like I read with this and like I feel a little bit more capable of dealing with the difficult stuff that comes up, or like if I'm reading about something that's very difficult, rather than some decks which are a little bit harsher and scarier and just kind of bluntly present you with the problem. And then you're like, okay, where do I go from here? Whereas this deck, yeah, it's like a little bit more supportive feeling. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm for sure like personifying my decks a little bit, but God, the aces are just so beautiful. So yes, that is the Crystal Visions, which is deep but not dark, and is realistic but not harsh. So, and speaking of deep but not dark, you had to know that MJ Cullinane was making an appearance, right? So we have The Guardian of the Night, which is a forever favourite and is my OG deep but not dark, positive but not pretending that the negative doesn't exist. Like that's what I'm looking for, is a deck that can be positive without ignoring the negative. And that truly, I mean, that's what toxic positivity is in a lot of cases, right? It's ignoring your problems rather than addressing them. This deck also beautiful, pretty, little like sparkle. Like this world card is one of the most beautiful world cards. It's sparkly. I love it. So yeah, it's pretty, which helps. I feel very comforted by the nighttime energy of this deck. Like it's Guardian of the Night. They're all kind of nighttime scenes for the most part, that just feels cozy and a little bit safe to me. Yeah, it's an accessible deck no matter what kind of mood I'm in. This is very much the same for the Grimalkin's Curious Cats, which I will also grab. Do you know what? I should have done these at the same time. That would have been smart, wouldn't it? I always think of the Grimalkins, the cat deck, as the definition of like firm but fair. And then the Guardian of the Night is my OG, like goes deep without going dark kind of deck. Ironically, because it's the nighttime, but you, you know what I mean. So yeah, they're both very accessible in terms of like the perspective of whatever mood I'm in. They always feel usable to me. It's not as though I'm ever scared of using the cards, which, to be fair, if I was in a position where I felt scared of using tarot, that's a clear sign that tarot is not the answer in that situation. And like here, we've got two traditionally very scary cards. We've got the Nine of Swords and the Death. And like, I really like this Death card because it kind of similar to the Crystal Vision that I just talked about. Like, it is a death card. We've got the owl hunting the mouse. We've got these thorns and these like red eyes, which look kind of spooky. Like, it's not pretending that the death card is only about rebirth, which kind of, that's one of my like pet peeves with tarot, is the idea that the death card is just about transformation and rebirth, when it's, to me at least, the death card is about the ending of the thing that is something that is scary or painful that's ending, or that you don't want to end. Like, that's what the death card is about. And yes, the rebirth and the transformation comes afterwards, but like, you've got to have the death moment to have the rebirth moment. And then like the Nine of Swords is a traditionally scary card, and this looks like a little bit spooky and scary almost. We've got like the birds in the rib cage and this cat with its hair all raised like cats do when they get scared. Like, it's a Nine of Swords. It fits with the theme of the deck, and none of them are too dark or scary. The other reason I really like these decks, and MJ Cullinane decks in general, but these two in particular, they're definitely the kind of softest, gentlest, most positive ones of hers that I've got. But the other reason that I really like MJ Cullinane decks is for the guidebooks. So the guidebooks for these decks also don't skew too positive. They still offer a holistic interpretation of the cards. So like, if we find that death, so like it does address, then it can be scary. Change is inevitable. When the death card appears, you may need to consider if you're devoting too much time and energy to something that no longer offers growth potential. Your effort will be wasted. At times, we do everything in our power to avoid the thing we fear. Like, it's speaking to what the death card actually is about. It's not too harsh, and it does have a kind of positive message to it. It ends on it's like a productive way of reading the card. So yeah, they still offer, and all her guidebooks are like this so far, I found. They offer a holistic interpretation of the card, and I feel like they leave you with something of a path forward, and they manage to, I just really like the way she writes about the tarot. Like, she manages to speak to many aspects of the tarot without being scary, and with, like I say, like offering you a bit of a path forward about it. So that is MJ Cullinane and her wonderful decks. That's all the decks. No, I wanted to briefly mention the Squid Cake Marseille, because I'm not super well versed in Marseille, as I talk about all the bloody time. But there is something about this deck in particular. Again, it's pretty, it's cute, it's hard to be scared of this deck, but also I think because I don't know the system very well, trying to read Marseille is a bit of like a, I don't know, it does something. It's a bit of like a reset for my brain in a way. And I think because Marseille tends to be a bit more matter of fact, that I feel reassured by it. There's not too much in the imagery to get my brain going. Like, if I'm already feeling very overwhelmed, if my brain is running 100 miles a minute, if I'm feeling very like overstimulated, I don't want to look at very complicated imagery that then offers up 100 more associations in my brain. Like, this is not too exciting to look at in the nicest possible way, and I mean that as like a positive. Like, it's very pretty, I enjoy looking at it, but it's not sparking 100 different thoughts based on the imagery. So it's kind of a bit of a reset in a way, and I really appreciate Marseille for that. Like I say, it might be because I don't know the system very well, and as I get better at it, that will kind of not be the effect it has on me. But for the moment, it works. It's a bit of a reset. I have to kind of take my time with it and slow down. And like I say, it's not too much. It's not too exciting. So I wish there was a better word than exciting, because that sounds like a bad thing, but I hope you know what I mean. That is my handful of decks for when I'm feeling sad and bad and not very good. And I kind of mentioned the ways that I approach reading with cards when I was talking about them, but essentially it boils down to don't make it worse. So if I'm dwelling on something that is giving me a lot of anxiety, I'm not going to read about it. It's already in my brain. It's already, like, my brain is full of it. I either need to take action or know that I can't take action. So pulling cards is like functionally useless at that point. Like, if I've just got something circling the brain, like, I don't need to be reading about it, because all it does is like feed that cycle. So if it's anxiety based, I'm probably not going to do a reading, which is, as I said, tarot can be helpful. It's not always helpful. In general, what I do like to use cards for is I try to be as aware as possible about what is contributing to my general feelings of squishiness. The reclaim kind of presents me with options to choose from. So if I don't know how I'm feeling, it's like, here is a list of, I think it's like 90 or 100. 90. It's like, here's a list of 90 emotions. Choose which ones you think you're feeling and go from there. And like, obviously this doesn't cover every possible way of experiencing emotion, but it's a starting point. And if I'm feeling overwhelmed or like I can't get a handle on myself, then it's a good place to start. So this is really helpful for when I don't feel aware of what I'm feeling. I hope that makes sense, because like, there are so many reasons I might be feeling a type of way. like either my mental health is rubbish, or my hormones are giving me hell, or I've not been able to like tend to myself autistically speaking. Like, there are, or, you know, I watched the news and that sent me into a bad mood. Like, there are so many reasons why I might be feeling a type of way, and I kind of read accordingly. So like I said, sometimes I'm just trying to figure out what I'm feeling. If I'm kind of just busy and overwhelmed, I want quick readings that give me some like positive vibes, something to focus on, which is what MJ Cullinane's decks, specifically the Guardian of the Night, that's what this is so good for, because I know this deck, I'm familiar with it. I can just like pull a couple cards and be like, okay, this is something to focus on and find a way forward. And if it's not the way forward, then it's like, okay, but at least I'm moving. If I'm feeling very ungrounded and disconnected, I might want to do a longer reading that I can focus on for longer, but I will probably pick a spread more or less at random. That is where Tarot by the Moon especially comes in really handy, because I can basically pick a spread at random and they're all pretty vague. Like, oh, that's cute. It was Valentine's Day yesterday as I'm filming this, so happy Valentine's. Like, this is tuning into the heart. Where can I be more loving? What's holding me back? This one is specifically about relationships, but you could focus this on like a romantic or a non-romantic relationship, or your relationship with yourself. Like, they're all pretty vague as to what you could tailor them to. And when I just want to like focus on a reading to focus on something, I kind of keep it vague, because then it's more about interpreting the cards, and I tailor the spread kind of away from whatever is maybe bothering me, and it's more about like going through the motions. And I mean that in a positive way. I know some people are going to think of, and again, like, this comes back to what I said, everyone's different, this is not advice, your mileage may vary. I like going through the motions of tarot to kind of reground myself and like, okay, pick a spread, pull the cards, what do the cards mean, how do they connect to each other, how can that be used to address the question, how can I take that advice? Like, that is I use that as a way of kind of reorienting myself a little bit. And these are often spreads that I won't write down because I'm just going through the motions to like ground myself in the moment a little bit. That is how I tackle feeling kind of disconnected, a little bit like dissociative and not great in that sense. And then I guess the third, not that this has been particularly linear, but I guess the third way that I use tarot to address feeling like vulnerable and not great is when I'm feeling like specifically sad and grief feelings. And that is something I do try to actually face head on, because grief in particular does not go away by itself. And tarot and oracle I've found can be really helpful to walk through it with. And when this is the case, I read much more open-endedly. It's less about answering questions and more about opening up like perspectives and directions that maybe haven't really occurred to me. This is usually when I'm unable to sleep. So I actually keep these three by my bed, and the Reclaim is really great for like I said when I talked about it. Grief obviously is not just feeling sad, it's a lot more complicated than that. So the Reclaim can be really helpful when that's what I'm feeling, to kind of sort through the different layers of it. And then these two specifically, the Outgrow Yourself and the Guardian of the Night Tarot, I like to use these together. Specifically, I use the Outgrow Yourself like tarot prompts almost, and then the Guardian of the Night to like address this and just see what it brings up. Like I say, it's very open-ended. I'm not actually looking to answer questions. I just want to think about things. It's more like I'm doing a tarot reading. It's very similar to what I spoke about just now about using spreads kind of at random. Like it's very similar. It's kind of going through the motions, but like I don't know what it is about this combo. It's like going through the motions against the backdrop of feeling a lot of heavy grief feelings. Like they just work. And like I said, I'm not looking for answers because I mean, you can't fix grief. Like it's just the nature of it. Like it's not a problem that can be solved. It's only a thing that you can like figure out how to like cope with. So what am I doing? So like I will pull, say like I'll pull a couple of Outgrow Yourself cards at random and then sit and have a little think and like, okay, don't forget to water your plants. What can that mean to me in the way that I'm currently feeling? Plant by the moon. Oh, they work nicely. The sun and the moon. Okay. Yeah, like don't forget to water your plants, and then plant by the moon, which, you know, I really like these two together. Like don't get lost in the grief and you do still need to plant while you're grieving. And then cruelty is the highest pleasure. That feels harsh. But you know, I'll pull some cards, and then I also like to just randomly pull tarot cards as if I was using this to address what the Outgrow Yourself brings up. Does that make sense? Like it's kind of a thought exercise, but I just like these two decks specifically because like I said, the Outgrow Yourself is kind of actionable self-help. Also, I'm just now realizing the reason I like the Outgrow Yourself for when I feel very griefy is because it doesn't feel sorry for me. The Outgrow Yourself Oracle does not feel sorry for you. It just wants to like move you along, which I find incredibly helpful and also not patronizing. Also, I don't know why I'm tiptoeing around this. My mum died coming up to 4 years ago. So like, it's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but you know what I mean. Like, we don't need to feel sorry for me, but it is still a thing that I'm always going to be dealing with, as is the nature of losing someone. So anyhow, I like this deck because it doesn't feel sorry for me. And then I like the Guardian of the Night because it's nice. So I'll like pull cards, I'll think about what they might mean to me, and then I'll pull a tarot card as if I was using it to like respond to what the oracle card brings up. And again, it's kind of like a thought experiment, and I just like think it through and I think, okay, so if I was using the Two of Pentacles energy to respond to don't forget to water your plants, I might think, okay, so I'm juggling a lot of things, and sometimes it feels like what I'm juggling is a lot of different aspects of grief, but I also need to make sure I'm juggling what needs watering, and so on and so forth. We've got 2 for the sun and the moon. All right, I think that is everything that I wanted to say. I did jot down some notes because this one felt a little bit vulnerable, but I know I am not the only person who likes to reach for tarot and oracle when times are tough. So if you are similar, I hope you found this interesting. Let me know what decks you reach for and kind of how you practice tarot when you're feeling a similar way, if you feel comfortable sharing. No pressure, obviously. And yeah, I'm gonna leave it there, I think, because this has been an extra rambly one because I was sharing my feelings. Anyway, it's not that deep, it's fine. Like I said, I am gonna leave you here. So thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for spending some time with me. Give me a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.